Hey guys, just want to jump on here right before the video starts, let you know that this is not a food review video. I know this is something different that we haven't done before, and I did it because I think it's very important, not just as Americans, but Tennesseans included, that we don't just vote in the presidential race. If we really want change, if we want to impact our communities, the best way to do it is to vote in our local and state government positions. So, if you're a Tennessean and you want to find out more about one of the primary candidates for the governor race, this video is for you. Now, if this is something that you don't want to watch, by all means, we'll get back to the food reviews pretty soon. I'll have an update video probably coming out hopefully this week, letting you know, or this next week, letting you know where we're at in the process of getting back to the swing of things. And where we have been at all along. I've done a video on TikTok about it here not too long ago, kind of telling you why we was taking a break, and we're going to hopefully get into it within a couple months, get back in the swing of things. Things have been kind of hectic, and we're trying to get there. But again, this video is different. I think it's worth the watch if you want to find out about one of the candidates running for the primary spot for the government race in Tennessee coming up. So stick around, watch that. If not, we'll be back to the food reviews pretty soon. Mr. Fritts, you want to call you Mr. Fritz or
Monty works.
Monty?
Monty works much better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call you. I'll probably call you brother. I served in the Navy. I know you served in the Army, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'll call you brother.
That'd be
uh,
fine. That'd be
so
fine.
For people that don't know you like me, I didn't know much about you until recently. Your videos started popping on Facebook, and that's how I kind of wanted to find out more, and why I even reached out to begin with, is because I wanted to find out more about your stance for why you're running, and what makes you different.
Okay.
We've had Marsha Blackburn in the Senate for almost, well, she's been running in government for 30 years. Um, so we all know Marsha Blackburn, um, and I think we feel like we know Josh Rose pretty well. But I didn't know much about you. So,
Yes, sir.
first question, um, for people who don't know about you, why you're running for governor, and what makes you different from other candidates?
Yeah. Why the why in running? I feel called to do so. I often find myself now, as I spend lots of time in front of a windshield, a computer screen, or a microphone, more convinced. I don't know why anybody would do this, that it didn't feel like God was prompting them to do it. To be honest, um, I've been a state representative down in House District 32 for 4 years. I primarily ran to be a state representative because I was frustrated that Nashville was so mishandling COVID and all things around COVID,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And so frustration ran, term limited myself to 2 terms. I think career politicians are a bad thing. And so I spent most of my working career in uranium processing, manufacturing, nuclear manufacturing type stuff. At least the last 35 years of my working career, something associated with that. And been a soldier on a couple of different occasions. I joined the first time in '83 and spent about 10 years in the Guard. And then I reenlisted in '03 when we decided we were going to send Tennesseans to Iraq. I got my wife's permission at age 40. I was 40.
Oh wow.
And yeah. And so I reenlisted. I was ended up being platoon sergeant for convoy security and PSD team. And we did lots of patrols. Just made some tremendous bonds with those young men that were in my platoon. And done a little bit of everything. I've poured concrete. I did some law enforcement type work when I was younger, Department of Corrections in the mid '80s, early and mid '80s, and I was happy to get away from politics. To be honest with you, I felt like I'd gotten a few things done, and Tennessee had led the nation, and with 4 or 5 different pieces of legislation that we'd carried that nobody else in the country had done, much less the state. And Was honored to get to carry those, ready to go back to just being a full-time grandpa and hunting a little more, and raising a bigger garden, and all those kinds of things that we older folks do. And the old church term is, just to be honest with you, I felt like God put a burden on my heart to do this,
Absolutely.
and I have done it. We are working it hard. Uh, we're going to be obedient with this and push that message of liberty and less government.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty popular message.
Yeah, that's probably what got me most curious about your race. I grew up in a very small town. I was born in Tennessee, but I grew up in Damascus, Virginia.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a small town. I mean, everybody knew each other. When I lived there, it was a logging town. We didn't have much of anything, but what we did have was a community. And I
Yep.
feel like a small community builds probably the best people. And whenever you start getting to bigger, bloated communities, things start creeping kind of in. And I think that's what we kind of got in government right now. And that's why when you said less government, that's why. Oh, hang on, let me find out more about what he's running for.
It, it's and we've been true to that. I really there's a couple things that have come up that we've championed that I didn't run on, as primary issues. I ran on protecting our Second Amendment rights. We've been true to that. We ran on giving firearms and ammunition manufacturers some legal protection from predatory lawsuits. And
Okay.
we've passed a couple bills to do that. We passed one my first year, last year in 2025. We worked with Gun Owners of America to get such legislation passed and amended, that Gun Owners says is the best in the nation, or was then. I don't know what happened this spring, but we're fourth or fifth, depending on who you ask, in per capita manufacture of firearms and ammunition, and that's a good place to be. I want to see us be the arsenal of the republic and be number one. Um, I think those are good manufacturing jobs, and I'm a firearms rights supporter. I think God gave me that right,
Absolutely.
and we're going to defend it. Um, we we picked up a couple things. I won't bore you with all the things we specifically ran on. The budget become an issue for me because early on, because we were expending your tax dollars in Tennessee on what I refer to as corporate welfare. Just to define that so it doesn't sound like just a buzzword, when we spend money on corporations picking winners and by default losers, then we're practicing a form of corporate welfare that I think is constitutionally not suitable.
Let me ask you one thing to stop you right there. Uh, I, I like that standpoint because I don't think the government should be funding corporations. I don't like that aspect that where we don't get to choose where our money is going to. The government gets to choose and picks winners and losers, as you stated. Um, and you kind of jumped a little bit to where I was going to later on in this interview, but can you expound on that a little bit more so people can get a bigger and brighter idea behind that?
Sure. A couple of the things that got me interested in running for office that really were bothersome to me is the General Assembly passed in 21 or 22 legislation that would take 550 million Tennessee tax dollars and help build the Titans a new stadium in
Yeah.
Nashville. We did the same thing, not all direct cash, some tax and other incentives, but to a tune of 750 to 800 million dollars for Ford to bring in an electric plant in electric truck plant in West Tennessee. I have two Ford trucks, so I'm
Mhm.
not anti-Ford at all. But that's not the deal. More recently, let's touch on a couple of things that happened. A couple of reasons that I've had objections to the last couple of years' budget, to be honest with you. We had $13.5 million in last year's budget to help build the Smokies a new stadium in Knoxville.
Yeah.
that's close to home for me, but it's still not okay to do
Yeah,
that.
I'm a big Tennessee fan. I'm UT all the way. But I think there's enough, alumni. You got the alumni support. Why can't they fund the build their own things? I mean, we have that same thing here in Bristol. Uh, uh, Tennessee High School asked the local government to help them build their new football stadium. And I mean, I support having nice things in our schools and stuff, but not everybody's got kids to go to school and do that stuff.
Well, and the stadium I'm talking about in Knoxville is not a University of Tennessee stadium. That
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
I could make the argument that the taxpayer has some obligation to help keep our college universities upright,
Yeah.
Constitution, and am supportive of that. Not to overdo it, but I
Well,
mean, I'm
that's my
supportive.
thing is I don't mind some of my money going there, but when you're funding like, Tennessee Titans, for example, that's do they really need a new stadium? And is it that much and more important for my taxes to go to that?
We this year's budget, there was a budget amendment that put $20 million in for the Nashville Zoo and $5 million for the Knoxville Zoo. I love the zoos with my grandkids. It's a great thing to watch the grandkids see the elephants and giraffes and all that kind of stuff. But we shouldn't be funding those nonprofits. I can pay for that with my ticket when I go to the zoo, or there's the charity thing. Tax dollars are not charity; they're taken by force.
Exactly.
And so I guess the most recent example, just to make sure everybody understands when I talk about corporate welfare, there's word has come out from Nashville that Economic and Community Development, the Department of in Tennessee, is going to incentivize Starbucks to move their headquarters to Tennessee, and there's 30 million in incentives. And I just, again, that's outside the constitutional bounds. And moreover,
Well, let me ask
when
you.
we have infrastructure issues, not just roads, but EMT services, the ability to keep volunteer firefighters, equipped, and all, just down to those types of things. And we're funding ball stadiums and stuff. It's a problem for me.
Did they do that with In and Out when they moved to Tennessee?
I don't know the numbers on that. I have heard no, but I don't know for certain on that.
See, I feel like for like places like Washington State, California, taxes are extremely outrageous for corporations for the residents. I feel like if one of their things why they should move to Tennessee as a business is because we offer better, you know, solutions for their workers, not just them.
Yep.
So I would agree with you that I don't think we should be giving these big corporations, like Starbucks, which I've been to Seattle. They're on every corner. um, but I don't think we should be giving it to them. I think the workers, they would do better if they just moved here.
I would offer that liberty and less government will be a great catalyst to move people here. If we're really true to that, we're going to continue to have both people and industry want to come to Tennessee.
Exactly. I mean, we already got people moving from Virginia right now to Tennessee because of the mess is going over there. Because Tennessee's just a way better state. And not trying to be biased or anything. I lived in both states.
Yeah.
um, let's jump into you kind of position yourself a little bit of an outsider against Blackburn and Rose. In what ways would your administration be different from them?
Well, different in several ways. Up front, legislatively, I think even though I often hear someone in Congressman Rowe's campaign say, "Well, the legislators just voting yes or no. It's no more than that." The people in Roane and Loudoun County didn't send me to Nashville to just vote yes and no. They sent me to Nashville to fight for them.
Yeah.
And I think that if you want someone who will fight for your average Tennessean, for all Tennesseans, I've demonstrated a willingness to do that the other two folks have not. We don't take the big, pharmaceutical pack dollars, the foreign influence dollars. We don't take those donations. We're not going to raise the $6, $8, $10 million that the other campaigns are going to raise. And to be honest with you, brother, I think we need to remove some of what has become a profane amount of spending in politics. And we're very much on a grassroots approach. The other campaigns have campaign managers and paid staffs. And just to be honest, their staffs vet for them and give them bullet points, I think, to speak to. And you can go listen to the speeches and you will hear a very canned stump speech. If you come to hear me talk, you will hear me talk about budget, and you'll hear me talk about gun rights and but perhaps vaccines and medical freedom and all kinds of things. But I don't use those shallow speaking points. I try to talk about the matter. Sometimes that makes my discussion a little lengthier than others. I don't do that just to talk to hear my head rattle. But I told someone just today there's an event taking place in Middle Tennessee that we want to try to get there, but I want to do a debate. I've called upon the other
Yeah.
two candidates to do a debate. And let's take questions from the audience, and then let's give a 1 minute rebuttal or something, and be polite. I'll be polite. But I think there's a concern amongst the other candidates about having their voting records or lack thereof talked about. Just to be honest, and I think that's a problem. Well, anyways, the young man I'm speaking to, he says, "Well, you'll have 7 minutes and nobody gets to ask any questions." And so you have to ask yourself this: are you willing? One chance you might get to hear somebody is 7 minutes of hearing about how many generations my family has lived in Tennessee, and not wanting to talk about a voting record. Are those things sufficient to elect me to be the chief executive for the state of Tennessee? I say no. I think we need the debate. So I'm willing to debate. That would be different. We're taking on some issues that, they're following us on some of those. The other Republican candidates will. The Democrats won't follow us on some of these issues. But I'm an abolitionist. I think we need to end abortion in Tennessee, period. I'm an absolutist that our rights come from God, so shall not be infringed is really clear to me. It's less clear to those who have not stood up for your Second Amendment rights with legislation and fought for them. They vote yes or no. They don't fight for them. I'm a medical freedom person. I'm a Make America, Make Tennessee Healthy Again person. We passed the geoengineering legislation. I think the air we breathe, the soil we plant in and live on, and the water we drink, it's important to keep those clean. And I think that I have autonomy over what vaccines I put in my body or my children's body, and the government needs to stay out of that. I would like to see mRNA and self-amplifying RNA platforms be removed in Tennessee. I had a bill to try to do that this past year. I think that we give too much money to illegals still in Tennessee, and even though there was a little move on that this year in Tennessee, I've been pushing for 2 years. We shouldn't be funding any housing, any routine health care, nor education for foreign citizens, especially if they're illegally in these United States. We shouldn't pay a dime for that. And I say that specifically, brother. I think that doesn't matter who the person is, if they're at risk of dying, we can afford to, not allow someone to pass. But we're providing routine health care to illegals. And I have fellow veterans, you and I have fellow veterans that are homeless in East and West Tennessee and can't get their benefits. And
so VA is a nightmare.
Yeah, we've taken those things on. The budget, last thing I'll talk about, maybe last two things. In just being a different, I am the only candidate for governor of either party that has stood up against unlimited budget growth. At federal level, both the other Republicans have voted for it. One of the two of them has voted to send $5 billion in foreign refugee welfare. One of them voted to send, I think it was $17 million to hide misconduct by other congressmen, to provide a slush fund. I've stood up against the budget. I've stood up against the geoengineering. I've actually stood up for our gun rights and passed legislation that's pro 2A. None of the other candidates have done that. I've stood up against the illegals. We passed two pieces of legislation that were, I think, first in the nation in some regards in enhancing the penalty for illegals who commit crimes in Tennessee and the use of bond or the use of residency status in determining whether they get bond. Illegals ought not be like fishing. It should not be catch and release. It ought to be lock them up until they're deported. And we did an Article 3, Section 5 law 2 years ago, authorizing Governor Lee to send a brigade size force to Texas to help Texas repel the invasion. At that time, if you'll recall, illegitimate Joe was in the White House and he was sending people down to take down the razor wire, concertina wire
Yep.
that the Texas Guard was putting up. And so we were trying to send a message to illegitimate Joe and to the illegals that Tennessee's not going to be messed with. And with that, we've tried to reduce taxes on groceries. I think
Yeah, that was
getting
my
rid of
next thing I was going to ask you. That you supported reducing taxes, including the grocery tax, um, and I like that that standpoint. Ha- and I want to ask you, kind of mixed with that, um, property tax. In Bristol and Sullivan County in general, it doubled in both the county and the city. Just my house, and I've been here for 10 years, paid a lot less than what the value is on this place. And I know heard you said in one of the other interviews you had that we shouldn't be paying what's the word for it? Uh,
taxation against unrealized capital gains.
Yes, thank you. And if we get rid of, at least drop it back down of some sort, and try to reduce the taxes on the grocery tax, would you offset that lost revenue without raising taxes elsewhere?
Well, the grocery tax that I'm referring to is the state 4% grocery sales tax. So I actually think there'll be a positive impact for your counties on that, and your counties are the primary beneficiary of your property tax. So let's talk about grocery tax first. I think that if we don't spend the $30 million of your money to incentivize the Starbucks of the world to come to Tennessee, reducing the grocery tax in Tennessee on every citizen will not be felt in revenue collection. Even though there's a fiscal note to it, I think two things will happen. One, we're not sending money out to the corporations, and two, I think that putting that money back in your pocket and people's pockets in Roane County and Sullivan County and all around the state, there will be an additional generation of revenue with those dollars kept in the pocket. When you look at the fact that we spend about 90% of what we bring home or more on average, it means we're not saving very much. And it's only a few people that are saving at the 10% level. I think that's an indicator that our fellow Tennesseans need every dollar they earn in their pockets. And when we put some of that back, it's a good thing. So that's going to be a reduction in revenue for the state, but I think you're going to make up for it in local areas. You're going to see more revenue. What some people refer to a Laffer curve or supply side economics, I think will take place. Secondly, on the property tax reform, the Constitution does allow us in Tennessee to have a property tax that the counties collect, and the counties use that for county roads and their county school portion and jails and all those sorts of things. Keeping county things going. What I offered last year legislatively would have driven a stake in the ground, if you will, at 2020 or what you've paid for the real estate since then. Because I think your real estate, just like your car or whatever, it's really worth to you what you paid for it. And if we allow a continued assessment at every 4 and 5 years, soon that house that you bought in 10 years ago for $250,000 is going to be worth $2.5 million. And even though the rate may have been adjusted down because times are good, we're going to allow a tax base that could cripple people.
Well, yeah, it's going to hit seniors and unemployable veterans the most. The people that live on a very fixed income that can't afford a higher tax bill.
I agree with you, brother. And so the second thing that bill did was it prevented government from evicting a citizen for delinquency in property taxes. And I will offer or postulate that the county wasn't going to lose any money in their collections on what I was offering because they were already taxing at those rates, right? If we said from this point forward or 2020 forward, um, and you could do the same thing at 2022, I think, and be fair to everybody. And you wouldn't impact how much revenue is being collected if the rates stayed the same, but you would take that onus off of the average person that they're going to continue to pay taxes on a value on their home, and whether their home is worth it or not is really irrelevant until they sell it
Yeah.
because it is a unrealized capital gains. And then that second part, um, if you fall behind 2 or 3 years in your property taxes and you can be evicted from your home, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to end that. I want to end that in Tennessee. It doesn't prevent the county from coming back and collecting those dollars, right? Because if I fell behind in my property tax, my estate would have to be settled if Denise and I, my wife and I, passed away before our heirs got what was left, right? And the same thing would take place if I sold you my house.
Yeah.
All the debts against it would have to be settled
Yeah.
before you could buy the
Absolutely.
house. So we didn't mess with that. We were just trying to do something to protect the rights of the property owner.
I think
That's
that's the issue a lot of Americans have, not just Tennesseans, is we feel like we don't own anything.
Yep.
We just rent. We rent, no matter if we technically own or not, but we just rent back to the government. And I fear that at any moment the government can just kick us out.
Yeah, yeah. That's not what our founders thought,
No.
and so it is indicative of many in the Nashville establishment because our governor met either early this spring or late in the winter with the World Economic Forum, and the minds, if you will, at in the World Economic Forum are the same ones that postulate a new order where people own very little property and people don't have cash currency and people don't really get to make their own decisions about what they own. Somebody makes it for them. Again, that is antithetical to what Americans think, real
Yeah.
Americans.
I think that's something that I think that as America a whole should kind of look at in a bigger offset, just to realize that we have moved so far from what America was originally about,
Yeah,
and we should be able to at least feel comfortable enough to we can go home and don't feel like someone's going to steal that.
yeah,
I know for like I think it was Gatlinburg. People, having their houses seized to build a road or something, and that's terrible. I know we need infrastructure, but we also need homes that we grew up in that we love.
yeah, yeah. We've become too comfortable with eminent domain in our culture, I think. Let me throw two other quick things at you. Back to your question on what makes me different than the other two candidates. I'm not a career DC politician, first and foremost. And you can be a career DC politician after 2 years. It doesn't
Yeah,
require 25 or 30 years. When they start to think that it's just a vote and they're not fighting for the people they work for anymore, they become a career DC politician. When they start to take money from everybody and their brother, even foreign influence, and I push back on this APAC thing some. I don't care if the I stands for India, Ireland, or Israel, or any other country that starts with an I. We should be taking money that there's a perception that it has even a potential to influence our politicians. So I'm different there. I'm a Christian heritage person, so that makes me say some things that I'm comfortable saying.
yeah,
Again, part of being called to this, and I'm not being offensive. I tell most every group I talk to, I love them. I love them as countrymen, and I mean that. But I don't have to say things to tickle people's ears. I'm going to be obedient to God. I'm going to say what I think's true, and if people want to vote for me, fine. If they don't vote for me, I'm still going to love them.
yeah,
But as a Christian heritage person, we have a problem with Islam that we have allowed it start to mature and take toehold in the United States. And that is a movement, not the people. Let me be clear about that. It's not the individuals that are created in God's image, just like you and I are, but it's the political movement that is counter to our Constitution and wants to do away with our way of life and upset our Christian heritage. We cannot allow that.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking against that. It disappoints me that I don't have other people in political office that are willing to say those same kinds of things, that we need to stand against it, because it's just wrong. I I get lots of flack, my positions on life and guns and all kinds of things. I think that's probably the other big difference between me and the other campaigns. They they hire campaign managers to tell them what is politically correct to say and what is safe. I could care less if it's safe. I'm going to speak what I think is true. If I make a mistake, I'll apologize for it. I am human, but I'm not going to back up on my Christian heritage or the fact that I'm a Tennessee first, national sovereign, citizen only public servant. I'm not.
See, I feel like that we need that, and I think that's attracted a lot of people to Trump when he first ran. Was he didn't care what anybody thought. He was going to say what was on his mind, and we've had, this is not just Trump. This was the history of America. Men that are willing to stand up for what they believed in and willing to die for that. And we've moved so far from that. And Tennessee has a strong history of, that's why we called volunteers of, 1812, War of 1812, the Mexican American War. We stand up for what we believe in, and we're willing to go and support and die for those things. And I think we need more men to do that today.
I agree with you, brother. I would amen that. I'm going to say this with a smile on my face, because you have to cut up and have a little fun with this too, because it's a very serious thing. Our country's in trouble. Our state's in trouble. I think I'm the break glass in case of emergency candidate, because I think it is an emergency. But I'll say this with a smile on my face. I'm thinking we might need to go out and extract some DNA from people like Crockett and
Yeah.
and Jackson and Alvin York and John Sevier and George Jordan, who not everybody knows who George Jordan is. But I think we need to extract some of their DNA and inject it into some of these spineless politicians today, because they've become so milquetoast that because somebody either in their party leadership or someone that has given them money tells them they have to vote a certain way on an issue. I guess that's why they say it's only yes or no. But I got to tell you, when people understand, and I don't care if it's part of a big omnibus spending bill, right? Just the mere fact that we're going to send $5 billion to refugee welfare, foreign refugee welfare. We have Tennesseans that can't afford to buy groceries.
Yeah.
And it ticks a lot of Tennesseans off, and
I
they
think
don't want to talk about this.
it's a Christian principle to, serve and uplift your neighbor. And when we're not doing that, instead we're sending all our money overseas. That's where a lot of people have problems with.
And to the corporations, brother. In many cases, I've got a 1931 Ford truck and I've got a 2021 Ford truck. I like Ford trucks, but many of these corporations just kind of cave to the whim of the moment, and they have sold us out.
Yeah.
They've sold out the American working man. Between them and the crooked politician, the hosiery mills and the steel mills and the coal mines and the factories that our mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and great grandmothers and great grandfathers worked in and built houses and raised homes, we've replaced that with something. And now we've got H-1B visa holders coming in, and they're replacing the young college students.
Yeah.
That's objectionable to me. I think one of the better things that President Trump has done recently, he did an executive order thing last week that we're going to open up some more coal mines, I think, in the Powder Basin, and talked about Indiana, and talked about Tennessee, West Virginia. I think Virginia was in that mix, and keeping coal-fired plants online, because again, the other candidates have had oversight, the other Republicans. The rest of the other candidates that don't know beans from apple butter about energy and energy production. They think that we can sprinkle unicorn dust, the Democrats do, and keep the lights on.
Yeah.
It's a foolish idea. But we need coal, we need gas, and we need nuclear.
Yeah.
It's just
Absolutely.
that simple. Anyways, so these congressmen, they have oversight capability over US TVA, and they have watched us shut down places like Bull Run Steam Plant, which provided 4.3% of the electricity to the state of Tennessee. And they sat there with their mouth shut and didn't say anything. So Trump, to his credit, somebody's credit in his administration, that his Secretary of Energy, were pushing to keep coal-fired plants online longer. There was 2 years ago, I think there was a study come out that China was opening 2 coal-fired plants a week and had like 25 or 26 nuke plants under construction. I think President Trump's administration gets that. I think that these politicians that use his name to punctuate every sentence need to do a little more thinking and a little less ring kissing, and they would understand that we should be keeping these doggone coal-fired plants open.
Yeah.
So when Trump did this this executive order week before last, you know how they have them all come in and stand behind him when he signs something. I don't think there was one Tennessee person in the room, and
I don't think there was either.
that just disappoints the heck out of me. We had people from West Virginia there, because I heard West Virginia guys speak. We had folks from Wyoming or Montana there, and heard them speak, in Indiana. But I'm like, shouldn't we be leading this? And you knuckleheads that say that you're going to lead nuclear energy in Tennessee, you can't even keep the coal-fired plants going. I don't know why you would suspect that you're going to do something as complex as nuclear.
Yeah. I mean, we should. I mean, my family, the coal miners, West
Yep.
Virginia, and I think that's an honorable work.
Yep.
It's not an easy work. It's a laboring work, but it's honorable. It's a very honorable work, and it shaped this nation. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't had steel. So I think we should, lean into that, and we
Well,
need it.
President Trump, both my grandfathers were somehow connected to coal mining. My wife's grandfather was. And something that Trump mentioned that, again, most of these politicians don't get, it's not just about coal to make steam, to make electricity, but you have to have the right kind of coal to make coke. You can't make steel without coke.
Yeah.
And he talked about that. And I'm thinking, I wish some of these wannabe politicians would just come and sit and listen, shut their mouths and listen some. They might learn something. But instead, their campaign managers give them their 5 speaking points and they go out.
And I think that's what I'm afraid. And one of the reasons why I was so interested and glad that you were able or willing to sit down with me is that other politicians, I'm afraid, don't want to listen to just an average Tennessean about the issues that we face. They're worried more about what looks good to their image.
Well, I will tell you, brother, we're seeing this on the data center now.
Yeah.
AI and data center, because you're seeing the other campaigns. We've said for some time, as a matter of fact, I'm on record with Flora Tidings and Stuart McWhorter in committee saying AI is happening to us, not for us.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two different approaches. I think God made me and you to solve great problems.
Yeah.
I think I might design a shovel and you might invent a backhoe. I might design a light bulb and you might invent a supercomputer. God give us an ability to make tools, and I think it's okay to make those. But when you see the electrical usage, the impact on water, whether it's usage or what it does to the water, and we don't know what the field is, the frequency field's going to do. I understand that Senator Blackburn come out and said recently, well, we don't want to put an AI data center too close to the zoo. It'd be hard on the animals. Well, what about the kids in the schoolhouse?
Yeah.
What
Or
about
just
my cattle?
birds, anything.
Yeah. What about my chicken or my cattle if I have a farm? And, you know, I think they're going to get tore up on that issue. I don't think they understand two or three things. I guess I could give you, but I just think they're out of touch. And I think I hear the Democrats and independents speak. I've sat in forums and debates with lots of the other people, and it's not just our Republican candidates. The Democrat, uh, bless her heart, we're going to let somebody from Memphis, Tennessee, who has taken advantage of people for decades, strip them of their rights, make them pay huge amounts of property taxes and utilities, and let the city just fall down
Yep.
around them and crime rates. And that person's going to come out and be a good governor? Really? Come on. They, I, I'm not picking on this dear lady, this Jerry Green, but um, I can't imagine that a sane Tennessean would look at this person who had something to do with Memphis government, not Memphis people,
Yeah.
good people that want just what you and I do. They want
Yeah.
what you have in Bristol and what I have in Kingston, and but their governmental leaders have failed them so miserably that their property taxes are sky high. Their their infrastructure's in a mess. Their schools are broken. Crime rates, because they've tried to disarm them at
Yeah.
every turn.
Yeah. I
Their
think this
crime
was the
rates.
third largest crime city in the country at one time. I don't know if it still is,
Yeah,
but it
so
was one time.
I think Memphis is the Tennessee Pearl on the Mississippi River, and I think that the some of these knucklehead chuckleheads that we've elected out there to run things, it's the same thing you see in lots of blue cities and blue
Yeah.
states. They're they just don't get it.
Well,
And
I think I like what you said. Don't DC my Tennessee, but I would almost say don't Nashville or Memphis my Tennessee.
it's good. I might plagiarize that.
All right, go
Hey,
for it. Go
hey,
for
don't
it.
if John Rose hears that, he'll have a commercial on it tomorrow. I can guarantee you. If he hears this interview, he'll have a commercial out before the week's up where he'll be saying, "Don't Memphis my Tennessee." And I'm having fun. I'm smiling, but it's the truth, and they know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of your talking points, like I said, doing some research before this interview, and I've seen Marsha Blackburn come out on some of the same points with the property taxes and stuff like that, and it kind of makes me laugh a little bit. I'm like, politics.
Well, I think the unfortunate thing, I've told some of my friends, I said, I shouldn't have ran for office. I should have just charged them a big salary and told them what to say. I could have made them much more popular. But
Yeah,
back to your point, brother, the whole out of touch, um, it's everything from the school vouchers to geoengineering. Let me tell you, Congressman Rose went on I think the Matt Murphy show at WTN Super Talk in Nashville last week and kind of made fun of me because we've led the charge on this geoengineering.
yeah,
I got to tell you, there's somewhere around 35, 40, maybe 45% of the Tennessee voters that just wrote him off because to them this is a serious thing. And he gets into the contrails and all that, which proves he just doesn't understand what he's talking about. This whole uh, cloud seeding thing is active in the United States.
yeah.
We prohibit it. It's not supposed to be happening here. But I got to
Supposed
tell
to
you,
be. I think it still
after
is.
well, yeah, after the and it's worse than the stripes you see in the sky. I say
Yeah,
this to people from time to time, it offends them. But if according to the cloud seeding companies that are successful and they say harvesting, that's their word, if they harvest 10% more rain or snowfall because they cloud seed in California or Utah, somebody downstream in the weather pattern is getting less rain.
I mean that's
That's a
just
problem.
yeah, that's a high school. What was the study on it? But I mean, it's high school knowledge that
Meteorology.
it all goes in a circle. Someone's going to be feeling that from somewhere else.
And so to just kind of laugh that off and then say that you support the farmer is an incongruent statement because the TVA put out 2 weeks ago that 70% of the Tennessee River watershed is in severe drought condition
Yeah,
and 40% in extreme. Well, maybe it's because we have people messing with the weather. And
Could be.
maybe we should stop messing with the weather. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, just put it in simple terms. So I'm okay if people want to make fun of me a little bit about that. I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to fight that we stop it all in the United States. I think that it's an immoral thing and it's unconstitutional. I think that when we start trying to manipulate weather, we're playing God. We're
Yeah.
building towers of Babel that are going to get us in big trouble. And you know, I sent Governor Lee and TDEC a letter after Helene hit your all's area of the state a couple of
Yeah.
years ago, and I asked them to do additional samples, particularly in the Nolichucky, but I mentioned
Hmm.
several of the river systems, and they said they didn't have the money. It's what the guy that come to committee and answered that. And so, if you look in our Tennessee law, before the law that I passed prohibiting geoengineering, but the governor has the responsibility under Title 58 to continuously monitor environmental conditions that could result in catastrophes. And that's a paraphrase. It talks about forest fires, it talks about floods and floodplains, and it talks about weather modification. I didn't do that law. It's been in there for a while. So when the TDEC person, it's the wrong answer when they say to the
Yeah.
state rep, well, we don't have the money to do it. Well, we funded your budget.
Where'd that money go?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's, I want to kind of touch on the data center thing because one of the scariest things for me is I don't want to wake up and the Great Smoky Mountains is covered in data centers. I mean, we have two. This is the most beautiful land in the country. I've been all over the country. This is the most beautiful land in the country. I don't want to see a data center every time I turn around, ruining our natural beauty that we have in this country.
yeah, yeah, and me neither. I agree with you, but I think there's a condition even worse than that, brother. I don't want to wake up and we have delegated our thinking to a machine.
Yeah,
I don't want to wake up.
we're almost there.
Well, we're getting there, and we're already collecting. You know, the phones and the computers you and I are using. We had to sign agreements to get
Yep.
data to be able to use them. So we're contributing to our own problem. My buddy Matt Murphy at Super Talk mentioned that to me the other day, and he's right. You know, we're kind of bringing some of this on ourselves. But we're monitoring every word, I think, in some cases. Our silly congressmen think they have the right to surveil us as part of this Patriot Act and FISA. I'm okay. Go after the foreigners.
Yeah.
They don't have any constitutional rights.
No.
I don't care if we monitor every telephone call for every foreigner, but they'll be monitoring
Yeah.
mine.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just that simple.
They've
And
used that Patriot ad really bad against us.
and so you know all your movements, and I think one of the bigger problems is our spending problems. So many of us use credit cards, and the data is tremendously valuable to people. So I don't want to see us wake up when we can't do simple mathematical equations and we can't make rational decisions on our own, that we have to rely on a machine to tell us what the options are. I think that's a godless approach, and I think
Mhm.
it's dishonoring to how God has blessed us to be able to do great things. Because I think Jeremiah 1:5 applies to you and to I. I think it applied to Jeremiah specifically, but we are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to walk into any room and be the sharpest, most sharpest intellect in any subject, probably in any room. But I can do great things through Christ, and uh, He gives us that ability. And when we make that de minimis by delegating our thinking, I just think we're headed down a really bad path for that. And that's really what, when I say this is happening to us rather than for us, that's my greatest concern.
So it kind of answers a question. Do you think that's the biggest issue that we're facing over the next 10 years?
No, I think it's a big issue. I think it's huge. I think geoengineering is a huge issue. I think personal autonomy to decide what vaccines you and your children take and where you send your kids to school. I think all those are huge things. But I think the greatest thing facing Tennessee right now is that we have people who have voted for what they thought was going to be a public servant who actually become a politician. And we voted for people that said, "Hey, I'll stand up for your Second Amendment right, or I'll be a small government, uh, limited budget kind of person." And they haven't followed through at the federal level and at the state level. And I think there's a lot of Tennesseans that are saying, what does it even matter? If I go vote, these idiots all do the same
Yeah.
thing. They all become institutionalized when they get there. And so I think the greatest risk for us is a continued erosion of people who participate in the electoral process and get engaged. I am encouraged that some of the 20 and 19 and 29-year-olds are really fired off about what my generation has done to them. We've left them in a horrible spot.
Yeah.
And I think they're fired up. But if we don't course correct that, if we don't inculcate a sense in our culture in Tennessee that somebody in Nashville is fighting for the average Tennessean, for every Tennessean, all Tennesseans, average Tennesseans, I think we're going to continue to see a disengagement by the voting public. Nature hates a vacuum, and there will be some Marxist ideology that fills that vacuum.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge danger to us.
And I think I want to ask you this because with some what you just said, just establishment, useless. I'll use that word. I won't put that in your mouth, but useless politicians. Um, they've got their mindset, and so I want to ask you this: Has there? Can you tell us about a time you changed your mind on an important issue, and what led that to that change?
Yeah, let me give you a couple that come to mind first for that. I would say the first would be special session. A couple of years ago, Governor Lee was pushing this crazy red flag law. I'm never going to concede to that because I'm an absolutist on that, right? But there was a motion come up on the floor that we could vote to just sine die, which means we're basically, you have constitutionally, if I get called into a special session, I have to go. But somebody made the motion that we sine die immediately, that we just pull away and not hear any bills. Well, I was stupid enough to think that I could offer some good gun legislation. And I did. I drafted some stuff I thought was, well, I couldn't get it past the the clerk's office. I couldn't get it past the governor's call. I should have voted the other way. I should have just been the person that voted with the other half dozen. There was only a half dozen or 20 or 15 or something voted that way. But I thought I would be able to make a difference and offer good gun legislation. At that point in time, I didn't realize how much most of the Nashville political establishment hates your right to keep and bear arms. Secondly, there was a bill that come up, this whole agrichem bill that come up, that the wording of it was really benign. And a guy that I think a lot of in West Tennessee carried the bill, and I trusted what he was saying. And I read my legislation before I vote on it, and it was really benign, I thought, in that it was just protecting the chemical manufacturer, this whole glyphosate thing, from lawsuits because of the labeling issue, right? And that they had to go along with what the FDA asked them to put on the label. Well, I voted with that bill in committee, and then a good friend of mine, become a good friend of mine, Bernadette, uh, up in your area, actually, up in Northeast Tennessee, she kept bringing me information saying, Monty, you're wrong about this. And she was very polite, very persistent. And I think between what Bernadette offered me and then when the federal government tried to push the same kind of thing through, I realized there was something nefarious going on there. And I think that in this case, a German chemical company was attempting to put all of the liability for the use of their product onto the Tennessee farmer. Mm. And so I come out and spoke against that and everything. And so I'm sure I messed that one up. I have a funny one, I'll tell you, if you have if you have a minute. And it's true. It's a true story, but I think it's funny. I laughed at it anyways. So we had 4 Democrats in Nashville decide that they're going to sponsor a bill and make marrying your first cousin illegal in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, brother, I don't know any first cousins that are married. And just for the record, my wife and I were married on the 11th. On the 10th, we were not related, right? So I was doing this to cover for anything. But what they were really doing, the Democrats they don't have a majority to get legislation passed, and they offer some, lots of them I love to death, love the people to death. Sometimes they carry some goofy legislation. And they were making fun of people that look like me and you and sound like me.
Oh, yeah.
I realize I have an accent. That's what it was. And and they couldn't get anything else passed, and they were trying to get one of those gotcha bills because it was kind of one of those danged if you do, danged if you don't votes, right?
Yeah.
And so I can be a little hard headed, and I really, at my core, marriage is an institution that God designed. Period.
Yep.
And it's between a man and a woman. Period.
Yeah. Clip that.
Outside that, government ought to stay out of it. Because think about, how do you enforce that? Do you go in with your fiance to the courthouse and they say, y'all look too much alike, you can't get married? I mean, I'm being funny
Yeah.
and goofy, but how do you enforce it? Do you take a DNA test? It's
Yeah. How would you? I mean, other than going like some ancestry, how would you even know?
yeah. So, anyways, and if I'll tell you, brother, if you were to tell me you were married to your first cousin, I'd probably smile at you and say, brother, you should have drove a couple more blocks for your first date. And and but I'm not condoning that. But anyways, I voted against it. 2 Republicans voted against it. Most Republicans voted for it. A good number of them just didn't vote one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
And that was the safe bet probably. And I try to let my no be no, my yes be yes. But anyways, I vote for it. Man, it wasn't 5 minutes I got back to the office, and I had a local news channel comment said, Representative Fritts, we understand that you support first cousins getting married. No, it's not the case. And I tried to explain everything I just talked to you and about, and this young person kept pressing. And I finally, I just like, I said, I'm kind of bored with this. And they kept pressing, do you support first cousins getting married? And I'm thinking, how many times do I have to answer your question? No. Are you not paying attention to what they're really doing? And so I said, I'll tell you, to the young reporter, I said, I've watched the voting records of these 4 Democrats for the last couple of years, and I've seen how they voted on life and on guns and on budgets. And I'm convinced that their families have been inbred for generations. And it stopped the whole interview.
You wanted
And so,
you want to support continued for their relationships. What it was.
I guess but the truth of the matter is, sometimes you have those. I don't know if that's my best vote or my worst vote. You can make up your own mind. I'm proud of that vote because I stood up, and I'm the person. We carried legislation 2 years ago, 3 years ago, after this Obergefell ruling. And I'm not hating on any individual, but homosexuality is a sin.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear about that.
It's truth.
It's what God says.
Yep.
And I can still love that person, be a witness, be light and salt to them, but it's a sin, and and I hope they'll repent. But there is no such thing as forcing a pastor to perform a wedding ceremony. And there was a couple things were happening. You can see it on record. You had the same-sex couples trying to force pastors and all to do weddings, and if they didn't, they would sue them.
Yep.
And then you had young people, apparently in some states, like 19-year-olds that were going in striking up a relationship with a 90-year-old just to get to their bank account. And if a judge or somebody denied doing the wedding, it put them at lawsuits. So I'm like, we can kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone here. And so we put 10 words in law: a person shall not be required to solemnize a marriage. And I don't want my pastor, your mayor, or your judge, whomever, they shouldn't be forced to do a wedding for anybody they object to. If they just think, if I go into them and it's my fiance, and they just say, I don't want to do that, they have that right of conscience not to. Our Constitution guarantees rights of conscience.
And I want to kind of expound on that just for a second, because I was a youth pastor for about 7 years, and I want people to realize, just because we believe that it's biblically marriage is between a man and woman, and that it should be a right for the pastor, judge, whoever, to say no. It's not because we don't love you, but it's because it's our God-given right to practice what we believe. And if we believe that's between a man and a woman, we shouldn't be forced to do that.
Well, can I take that a step further for me? I'm not trying to speak for you. I'll speak for old Monty. Perpetuating a lie that's leading someone to hell is a sin as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last couple sentences in Romans chapter 1.
Yeah.
those who give hearty approval to such. Our last sentence. And we can be compassionate with it, but by not telling the truth, if you come up to me, brother, obviously you were born male. God made you a
Oh yeah.
male. And if you come up to me and you say, I demand that you refer to me as what her or she, if I go along with that, I'm perpetuating a lie in your own mind that your mental illness and your sin has stricken you with, that I have an obligation to, in compassion, be light and salt and speak the truth. And we've unfortunately allowed too many weak males in politics, and we're not willing to do that.
I like how Penn Jillette, the magician.
Yes, yes.
I love it because I used to teach my youth this because he's probably the one of the biggest atheists out there, and he has a story where this man walked up to him and he handed him a book of Psalms, and inside that book he had read a letter to him, and it was basically just telling him, I love you, I want you to read this if you would, I believe that Jesus loves you and he wants more for your life. And he said that he went back home, he opened it up, he read that letter, and he said, I still don't believe this, but I believe if you really true believe that this is the truth, then is it not more hateful to not share the truth than it is to just walk on by?
Yeah,
And I take that to heart. I mean, I feel like it's not only sinful, but it's hateful not to share the truth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so too.
So
It's a sad shape of what my generation has allowed our nation to devolve into, and it's been happening for decades. But the really the only enemy we have, President George Washington in his farewell address warned us about several things. He warned us about hyperpartisanship in politics, that parties would lead to care for the party over care for the Constitution. And I think Washington was and is our greatest president. I think we should heed those words. He gave us lots of really good insight. And just his reliance over his life, I'm sure he was not a perfect man because there's only been one of those.
yeah,
But, he referred to Providence' hand on this nation and how Almighty God had blessed it. And we've gotten away from that. I'm hoping there's an awakening taking place. I'm humbled that God would use a Balaam's donkey like me to call out the sword that lay ahead. But Ezekiel 33, verses 1 through 5 or 6, and God speaks to the prophet, and he says, the whole watchman on the wall. And he says, when you call out a threat or an army that and that's God speaking, I have sent on the land, we bring consequences on ourselves individually by our sin, but we also bring them on our nations and our communities collectively by engaging in and not being light and salt.
yeah,
And he's looking for a remnant of people. The Lord, the creator and king of all glory, is looking down, and he's looking for a remnant of his people that will just trust him. And, he even bartered down with Abram there in the tent, down
yeah,
to 10 people in Sodom.
yeah. He's looking
And
for them 10 people.
I think that's God's nature.
Yeah,
He's looking. And so I'm hoping that he finds them in Tennessee. My hope is that whoever wins the governor's election, that God blesses them, and that Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama and Missouri and Arkansas and Kentucky and West Virginia and Virginia, North and South Carolina, will look into Tennessee and say, surely the creator and king of all glory is working there.
absolutely.
That the drunkenness has slowed down or gone away. The addiction has been healed. The violence has gone down. And I really think those things are possible, brother. But I think it's going to require a move of repentance by us men of God first.
Yeah,
We're going to have to say to him, we've messed this up. Forgive us. Help us to speak truth in love, and help there to be a move of repentance in the state of Tennessee so that we can see a revival. Because the revival ain't going to come if there's not first a repentance amongst God's people, I think.
I agree. I agree totally. Well, brother, I appreciate you, sitting down with me, talking, answering any question I had. Mind you, people that watch this, I did not give him any of these notes. What I was going to ask him, he answered it all just off the top of his head, which I think is very impressive. And I want to thank you for sitting down with me and talking to me, answering the questions that I have, and hopefully answer some of the questions that people may have, leading into this governor race. And I do believe that God has his hand on you. And I think he's leading you where he wants you to have you. And I think you're a great candidate for this. And you got my vote. And I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you as the governor very soon.
Brother, I appreciate it. Thank you for your kind words.
Absolutely.